The great hall of the Galactic Council stretched wide enough to hold a small city. Thousands of beings from across the galaxy filled the floating platforms that circled the center stage. Their voices created a low buzz that echoed off the crystal walls. Today would change everything, though most of them did not know it yet. Ambassador Zextal stepped forward on his 6 legs. His blue skin shimmered under the bright lights as he raised his data pad. The hegemony had sent him here with urgent news. His people controlled over 1,000 worlds, and they were very good at finding new ones to add to their empire. Fellow council members, Zextal began, his voice carrying across the hall through translation devices. We have found something that worries us greatly. The third planet in the Sol system has become dangerous. A wave of laughter rippled through the crowd. General Vorth of the hegemony military leaned back in his floating chair. His massive frame shook with amusement. Dangerous? They have not even left their own world yet. How can they threaten anyone? Zextal's eyes darkened. He had studied the reports carefully. The humans of Earth had split atoms and built weapons that could destroy cities. They had machines that could think faster than most living beings. Worst of all, they showed no signs of stopping their rapid growth. You do not understand, Zextal said. These humans learn too fast. They fight too hard. In just a few hundred years, they went from riding animals to building rockets. Their whole planet is covered in weapons. From the ancient section of the hall, a voice spoke up. It was quiet, but somehow everyone heard it clearly. Elder Keeper Whisper of Stars had lived for over 2,000 years. Her people had seen empires rise and fall across the galaxy. They remembered things that others had forgotten. The hegemony speaks truth, she said, her old voice carrying wisdom and fear. We have seen this before. This species shows the signs of what we call the apex predator phenomenon. They are not just intelligent, they are designed by evolution to be perfect killers. The hall grew quiet. Even General Vorth stopped laughing. The Keepers were the oldest species in the council. When they spoke of danger, smart people listened. Whisper of Stars continued. On their world, humans were not the strongest or fastest creatures. They were not the biggest or most well-armed, but they survived by being smarter, more determined, and more violent than anything else. They hunted animals 10 times their size. They turned their whole planet into their territory. So what? Called out Trade Prince Nexhan of the Zephyrian Federation. His crystal body reflected the lights in rainbow patterns. They are stuck on one world. We have ships that can cross the galaxy. What can they do to us from so far away? Elder Whisper of Stars turned her ancient eyes toward him. You think distance protects you. But apex predators do not stay in one place forever. When they spread out, they take everything they touch. We have seen 3 species like this before in galactic history. 2 of them destroyed themselves in civil wars. The third one conquered half the galaxy before we could stop them. General Vorth stood up, his metals catching the light. Respected Elder, you speak of the ancient past. We have better weapons now. Better ships. Better technology. If these humans are so dangerous, we should deal with them before they become a real threat. That is exactly what you must not do, Whisper of Stars said urgently. Apex predators become most dangerous when they are threatened. Leave them alone, and they might stay peaceful. Attack them, and you will awaken something terrible. But the damage was already done. The idea of striking first had taken hold in many minds. Trade Prince Nexhan saw opportunities for new slave workers. General Vorth, saw a threat that needed to be removed. Ambassador Zextal saw a chance for his people to gain more territory. The debate went on for hours. Species after species stood up to give their opinions. The hegemony wanted to send a large fleet to conquer Earth quickly. The Zephyrian Federation wanted to capture humans for their trade in exotic slaves. The Nexari wanted to strip mine Earth's resources and use humans as workers. Only the Keepers and a few small species voted against taking action. They were vastly outnumbered. When the final vote came, it was not even close. The Council decided to send a fleet to Earth. They would offer the humans a choice: join the galactic community as a junior member species, or be conquered and enslaved. General Vorth was put in charge of the military operation. He selected Admiral Kesra to lead the fleet. 200 ships seemed like more than enough to handle one primitive world. "Make it clean and fast," General Vorth told the Admiral. "Show them our power, and they will surrender quickly. These humans have never seen real warfare." As the council meeting ended, Elder Whisper of Stars made one last attempt to change their minds. She approached the group of military leaders as they planned their attack. "Please," she said, "you do not understand what you are doing. These humans are not like other species. When you threaten their survival, they will not think about surrender. They will think about revenge." Admiral Kesara looked down at the ancient being with amusement. "Respected Elder, your people have grown too cautious with age. We have conquered hundreds of worlds. Earth will be just another one." "No," Whisper of Stars said quietly. "Earth will be the one that fights back." Far across the galaxy, Dr. Jake Collins sat in his monitoring station in the cold mountains of Alaska. He watched the stars through his powerful telescopes, looking for signs of life among the distant suns. He had no idea that life had already found him. The radio telescope picked up strange signals that night. At first, Jake thought it might be natural space phenomena, but as he studied the patterns more closely, he realized they were too organized to be random. Something was out there, and it was coming toward Earth. Jake tried to calculate the source of the signals. His equipment was not designed for tracking moving objects across such vast distances, but he managed to get a rough idea of direction and speed. What he found made his blood run cold. Whatever was sending these signals was moving much faster than anything humans had ever built. It was heading directly toward Earth. And based on the signal strength, it was not just one object. It was many objects flying together. Jake reached for his phone with shaking hands. He had to warn someone. But who would believe him? How could he explain that his radio telescope had detected an alien fleet heading for Earth? The fate of two civilizations now rested on whether anyone would listen to one scientist's impossible warning. Outside his window, the stars continued to shine peacefully. But among them, death was traveling at the speed of light toward an unsuspecting world. The Galactic Council had made their choice. Now, humanity would have to make theirs. The warning had been ignored. Soon, everyone would pay the price. The alien fleet dropped out of faster-than-light travel at the edge of Earth's solar system. Admiral Kesara stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the third planet grow larger on his screens. The blue and green world looked peaceful and primitive, perfect for conquest. "Begin standard scanning," Admiral Kesara ordered his crew. "I want to know everything about their military capabilities before we make contact." The results surprised him. Earth's surface was covered with cities much larger than the Council had expected. Radio signals filled the space around the planet. Most shocking of all, the humans had hundreds of artificial satellites orbiting their world. "Admiral," his communications officer reported, "we are receiving multiple transmissions from the planet. They know we are here." Admiral Kessera was not worried. Primitive species often panicked when they first saw advanced technology. Fear would make the conquest easier. On Earth, the last 3 days had been chaos. Dr. Jake Collins had finally convinced someone to listen to his warnings. Within hours, every government on the planet was tracking the approaching fleet. The telescopes confirmed what Jake had detected. 200 massive ships were heading straight for Earth. President Patricia Williams sat in the emergency command center deep beneath the White House. Around her, generals and scientists worked frantically to prepare for humanity's first contact with alien life. Unfortunately, these aliens did not seem friendly. "What do we have?" President Williams asked Admiral Lisa Harper, the newly appointed commander of Earth's hastily organized defense forces. Admiral Harper looked grim. "Not much, Madam President. We have converted every military satellite into a weapons platform. NASA has given us control of all space assets. We have nuclear missiles ready to launch, but against 200 alien warships." She did not need to finish the sentence. Captain Ben Torres was loading his mining ship with every explosive they could find. As head of the Asteroid Mining Guild, he commanded a small fleet of tough industrial vessels. They were not warships, but they were the only spacecraft Earth had that could actually fight in space. "Listen up," Ben told his crew over the radio. "These ships were built to crack open asteroids. Today we find out if they can crack open alien ships too." The aliens made first contact exactly as Admiral Kessera had planned. A transmission in perfect English reached every radio and television on Earth. "People of Earth," the Admiral's translated voice said, "I am Admiral Kessera of the Galactic Hegemony. Your world has been selected for integration into our empire. You have one standard galactic day to surrender your governments and submit to our authority. Resist, and your species will be enslaved." The transmission ended with images of other worlds the hegemony had conquered. Burned cities, enslaved populations, mass graves. President Williams looked around the command center. Every face showed the same determination. "Send our reply," she ordered. The message that went back to the alien fleet was short. "Go to hell." Admiral Kessera was genuinely surprised by the human response. Most species begged for mercy or tried to negotiate. These humans had simply told him to attack. He almost admired their spirit. It would make breaking them more satisfying. "Begin the assault," he ordered. "Target their major cities first. Leave the rural areas intact. We will need some of them, alive to work." The alien ships moved into Earth's atmosphere like falling stars. Each one was larger than any building humans had ever constructed. Their weapons could level mountains. Their shields could stop nuclear missiles. But the aliens had made one critical mistake. They expected to fight a primitive, divided species. Instead, they found humanity united for the first time in its history. Commander Amy Walsh coordinated the ground-based laser batteries from her command post in Colorado. The weapons were experimental, designed for shooting down missiles. Against alien shields, they should have been useless. But Amy had a different idea. "All batteries, focus fire on grid reference Alpha 7, she ordered. "Maximum power, continuous beam." 50 laser installations across North America turned their beams on a single alien ship. Individually, each laser barely scratched the alien shields. Together, they created a focused point of energy that punched through like a hot knife, through butter. The alien ship exploded in a brilliant flash. It was the first enemy vessel destroyed in the battle, but it would not be the last. Dr. Elena Vasquez worked frantically in her laboratory as explosions rocked the building above her. She had been studying the pieces of alien technology that fell from the destroyed ship. What she found gave her hope. The shields work on a rotating frequency, she radioed to Admiral Harper. If we can match that frequency, our weapons will go right through. How long do you need? Admiral Harper asked. Give me 2 hours, Elena replied. You have one, Admiral Harper said, and cut the connection. Captain Ben Torres led his mining ships in a desperate charge toward the alien fleet. His vessels were built tough, but they were painfully slow compared to alien fighters. That gave him an idea. All ships, ramming speed, he ordered. Target the big ones. We only need to hit them once. The aliens watched in amazement as the human ships accelerated directly toward them. No species had ever used ramming attacks against the hegemony. It was considered suicide. Ben's ship, the Rock Crusher, smashed into an alien cruiser at full speed. The explosion destroyed both vessels, but it also created a gap in the alien formation. Other human ships poured through, firing everything they had. The battle raged for hours. Earth's defenses should have collapsed in minutes, but the humans kept adapting. When their missiles could not penetrate alien shields, they loaded them with nuclear waste and turned them into dirty bombs. When their fighters were too slow, they used them as guided missiles. Captain Roy Griffin found himself alone in space, his fighter damaged and his weapons empty. Below him, an alien capital ship was preparing to bombard New York City. Roy looked at his fuel gauge and made a decision that would be remembered forever. "This is Griffin," he radioed to Earth. "Tell my wife I love her." Roy aimed his fighter at the alien ship's main reactor and pushed his engines to maximum. The explosion lit up the night sky and could be seen from the ground. The massive alien vessel broke apart and crashed into the Atlantic Ocean. Dr. Elena Vasquez had done it. She had cracked the alien shield frequency and transmitted it to every human weapon. Suddenly, nuclear missiles that had been useless began hitting their targets. Laser batteries started cutting through alien hulls like paper. Admiral Kessera watched his fleet being torn apart by an impossible enemy. These humans fought like no species he had ever encountered. They did not retreat when they were outnumbered. They did not surrender when they were outgunned. Instead, they became more dangerous. "Admiral," his tactical officer reported, "we have lost 60% of our fleet. The humans are using our own technology against us." Admiral Kessera knew he had to retreat, but pride made him hesitate. The hegemony had never been defeated by a primitive species. How could he return to the Galactic Council and admit that 200 warships had been beaten by humans flying converted cargo ships? That hesitation cost him everything. Captain Amy Rodriguez had taken command of a captured alien fighter and used it to infiltrate the enemy formation. She flew straight into the flagship's main hangar and set off every explosive her ship carried. The flagship's reactor went critical. The explosion created a chain reaction that destroyed half the remaining alien fleet. Admiral Kessera died still, trying to understand how a primitive species had defeated the might of the galactic hegemony. The surviving alien ships limped away from Earth, carrying news of the impossible defeat. As they fled, they transmitted a final message across the galaxy. It was Admiral Kessera's last report, recorded moments before his death. Warning to all hegemony forces. The humans are not what we expected. They do not fight like any species we have encountered. They do not retreat. They do not surrender. They adapt and overcome. Do not underestimate them again. They are apex predators. On Earth, the celebrations were brief. Admiral Lisa Harper stood in the ruins of the command center, looking at the casualty reports. Millions were dead. Entire cities had been destroyed. But humanity had won its first battle against the galaxy. "What now?" President Williams asked. Admiral Harper looked up at the stars, where alien ships were still fleeing toward the edge of the solar system. "Now we make sure they never come back." Dr. Jake Collins, the scientist who had first detected the alien fleet, sat in his damaged observatory and thought about the future. Humanity was no longer alone in the universe. They had made enemies among the stars. But they had also proven something important. They could fight back. The galaxy had awakened something it did not understand. The quiet species from the third planet had shown their true nature. They were not victims waiting to be conquered. They were predators who had been sleeping. Now they were awake. 6 months after the battle for Earth, the first human ships left the solar system. They were nothing like the alien vessels that had attacked humanity. These ships were built from a deadly combination of human innovation and captured alien technology. Admiral Lisa Harper stood on the bridge of the UES Vengeance, humanity's first true starship. Around her, the crew worked with quiet efficiency. They all remembered the burning cities and the millions who had died. Today, they would begin to collect payment for that debt. "Ghost Drive is charged and ready," reported Lieutenant Commander Jake Martinez from his position at the navigation station. The Ghost Drive was purely human technology, developed by Dr. Elena Vasquez from her studies of alien equipment. It made ships completely invisible to alien sensors. "Target confirmed," said Captain Nina Rodriguez, looking up from her tactical display. "Hegemony mining colony on Kepler 442b. 300 alien military personnel. Estimated 5,000. Enslaved beings from various species." Admiral Harper nodded. Intelligence gathered from captured alien computers had revealed the true horror of the galactic hegemony. They did not just conquer worlds. They enslaved entire species and worked them to death in mines and factories across the galaxy. "Take us in," Admiral Harper ordered. "Silent approach. We end this quickly." The human fleet materialized around the alien colony like ghosts becoming solid. The hegemony defenders had no warning. Their sensors showed empty space right up until human weapons began tearing their ships apart. Captain Jake Martinez led the boarding parties that secured the mining facilities. What they found there made even hardened soldiers sick. Beings from dozens of different species were chained together, forced to work in conditions that killed them within months. "Admiral," Jake reported over the radio, "we have survivors, lots of them, but they are in bad shape. Get them to the medical ships," Admiral Harper replied. "And Jake, make sure every alien soldier down there knows what happens to slavers." The message was clear. Any hegemony personnel found guilty of enslaving other beings were executed on the spot. Those who had simply been following orders were given a choice: help free other slaves or join them in the mines. News of the attack spread across the galaxy faster than light. The humans had not just defended their world, they had gone on the offensive. They were hunting the species that had tried to destroy them. Dr. Sarah Kim worked in her laboratory aboard the research vessel UES Newton, developing new weapons for humanity's war fleet. Her latest creation was the Neural Interface System, which allowed human pilots to control their ships through direct mental connection. "The response time is incredible," she reported to Admiral Harper during their weekly briefing. "Human pilots using the neural interface can react 3 times faster than any alien species we have encountered. Their ships literally cannot keep up with our thinking speed. The technology gave human ships an enormous advantage in combat. While alien pilots had to press buttons and give verbal commands, human pilots could change course, fire weapons, and adjust shields simply by thinking about it." Meanwhile, the Zephyrian Trade Federation was learning that their business practices had made them targets. Ambassador Rex Hahn arrived at the neutral station Deep Space Nine to meet with human representatives, hoping to negotiate peace. Commander Dan Walker led the human delegation. He was a former Marine who had lost his entire family in the alien bombardment of Detroit. His orders were simple: find out what the Zephyrians knew about human prisoners. "We come seeking peace," Ambassador Rex Hahn said, his crystal body reflecting the station's lights in nervous patterns. "The Trade Federation had no part in the attack on your world. But you had a part in selling our people," Commander Walker replied coldly. He placed a data pad on the table between them. "We found these records in a hegemony computer. DNA samples from humans, genetic profiles, combat assessments. You have been selling information about my species to anyone willing to pay." Ambassador Rex Hahn's crystal form flickered with embarrassment. "That was business. We had no idea the hegemony planned to attack Earth." "Business," Commander Walker repeated. "You sold the genetic codes of my species so other aliens could create human slaves. You treated us like cattle at market." "Please," Rex Hahn said desperately. "We can make amends. The Trade Federation has resources you need, technology, information about other hostile species." Commander Walker stood up from the table. "You are right about one thing. You will make amends." The meeting ended when Walker drew his sidearm and put 3 rounds into the alien ambassador's crystal chest. Rex Hahn shattered like expensive glass, his fragments scattering across the conference room floor. "Any species that profits from slavery," Walker said to the recording devices in the room, "will share the same fate." The recording was broadcast across the galaxy. The message was simple. Humanity was not interested in negotiation with slavers. They were interested in extermination. Captain Tony Rivera commanded the destroyer UES Retribution on patrol near the former Nexari territories. His ship was one of the new Hunter-class vessels, designed specifically for tracking down fleeing alien ships. "Contact bearing 27 Mark IV, his sensor operator reported. "Nexari transport vessel attempting to reach the neutral zone." "Intercept course," Rivera ordered. "Let's see what they are carrying." The Nexari ship tried to run, but human ships were faster. When the aliens finally stopped, their cargo holds contained something that made Rivera's blood boil. 300 human children, kidnapped from Earth's outer colonies and prepared for sale as exotic pets. Rivera did not bother with prisoners. The Nexari transport became expanding gas and debris. The children were returned to Earth, but their rescue came too late for many of them. The psychological damage would last forever. Dr. Marcus Bell received the reports of these discoveries in his laboratory on Luna Base. As head of humanity's new bioweapons division, his job was to develop tools for fighting species that considered humans to be animals. "If they want to treat us like animals," Dr. Bell said to his research team, "then we will show them what apex predators can really do." His first creation was a virus specifically designed to target the hegemony's biology. It was transmitted through the air they breathed and attacked their nervous systems. Within days of infection, the aliens would lose all motor control and die in agony. The virus was tested on 3 hegemony worlds that had been identified as major slave trading centers. Dr. Bell's team delivered the weapon using modified cargo, ships that appeared to be carrying normal trade goods. Within a month, the 3 worlds were silent. Every member of the hegemony species was dead, but other life forms were completely unaffected. The virus had been designed with surgical precision to kill only the species that had enslaved others. The galaxy watched in horror as entire civilizations simply stopped communicating. When scout ships finally reached the infected worlds, they found cities full of skeletons and thriving ecosystems where other species lived normally. The Galactic Council tried to organize a response to the human threat, but their fleets were scattered and demoralized. Every engagement with human forces resulted in devastating losses. Human ships seemed to anticipate alien tactics before they were implemented. Admiral Kevin Stone commanded the 3rd Human Fleet as it approached the core worlds of the hegemony. His orders were to capture the hegemony high command and force them to reveal the locations of every slave camp in their territory. "Admiral," his intelligence officer reported, "we are receiving surrender offers from 17 hegemony worlds. They are requesting terms." "There are no terms," Admiral Stone replied. "Unconditional surrender or total destruction. Those are their choices." The siege of the hegemony core worlds lasted 3 weeks. Human ships surrounded each planet and systematically destroyed all military installations, orbital facilities, and industrial centers. When the aliens finally surrendered, their mighty empire had been reduced to agricultural worlds with no ability to wage war. But humanity was not finished. They had learned too much about galactic civilization to simply return home. The galaxy was full of species that preyed on the weak. Slavers, raiders, and conquerors who had operated freely for thousands of years. Elder Whisper of Stars watched the human fleet from her observation platform on the neutral world of Haven. She had tried to warn the Galactic Council about humanity's true nature. Now she was seeing the consequences of their failure to listen. A human shuttle landed near her platform. Admiral Lisa Harper emerged, flanked by her security detail. The human leader looked tired but determined. "Elder," Admiral Harper said with respectful greeting, "your people tried to warn them. We remember that. And now you hunt them like the predators we knew you were." Whisper of Stars replied sadly, "Is there no mercy in your species?" Admiral Harper was quiet for a long moment, looking up at the stars where human ships patrolled between the worlds. "We offered mercy once. We offered peace. They responded with invasion fleets and slave markets. Now they know what happens when you threaten humanity's children." "What will you do now?" the Elder asked. "We will do what apex predators have always done," Admiral Harper said. "We will protect our territory and hunt anything that threatens our pack. The galaxy made us this way. Now they have to live with the consequences." 2 years into humanity's galactic campaign, the crystal cities of Nexar Prime burned with radioactive fire. Admiral Kevin Stone watched from the bridge of his flagship as the beautiful spires that had taken the Nexari thousands of years to grow were reduced to glowing ash in a matter of hours. "Target destruction confirmed," reported his weapons officer. "All major population centers have been eliminated. No survivors detected." Admiral Stone felt no satisfaction in the destruction. The Nexari had built their cities from living crystal that grew like coral reefs, creating structures of impossible beauty. Under other circumstances, humans might have marveled at their architecture, but beauty meant nothing when it was built on the bones of slaves. What about the camps? Admiral Stone asked. Captain Nina Rodriguez looked up from her tactical station. Her Special Forces teams had been searching the planet for 3 days, using new scanning technology that could detect life signs through solid rock. "We found them," Nina said, her voice tight with controlled anger. 17 underground facilities. They were using captured beings from 43 different species as experimental subjects. The survivors are being evacuated to medical ships. Admiral, Stone nodded grimly. Intelligence reports had indicated that the Nexari were more than just slavers. They had been conducting genetic experiments on their prisoners, trying to create new types of workers for different environments. The humans they had captured were being used to develop soldiers that could fight in Earth-like conditions. The discovery had sealed the Nexari's fate. Admiral Lisa Harper had authorized the use of planet crackers, massive mining devices converted into weapons of mass destruction. The crystalline beings had learned too late that their diamond-hard cities could not protect them from human engineering. Captain Jake Martinez led the boarding parties that swept through the abandoned Nexari research stations. What they found there would haunt him for the rest of his life. Laboratories full of surgical equipment designed for alien biology, genetic samples stored in freezers, and worst of all, detailed plans for creating hybrid soldiers using human DNA. "Admiral," Jake reported over the radio, "you need to see this. They were not just experimenting on prisoners, they were trying to create an army of human-alien hybrids, perfect soldiers that could operate in any environment." The transmission was recorded and sent back to Earth, where it reached Dr. Marcus Bell's bioweapons laboratory. Bell had already developed targeted viruses for eliminating specific species. Now he was working on something far more terrible. "If they want to play with human genetics," Dr. Bell said to his research team, "then we will show them what human evolution has really created." His new weapon was not a virus. It was a genetic plague that attacked the reproductive systems of any species that had experimented on human prisoners. The weapon was designed to ensure that such species would never be able to have children again. Within a generation, they would simply cease to exist. Dr. Bell called it the Sterility Protocol. It was deployed on 12 worlds that intelligence had identified as genetic research centers. The plague spread through food and water supplies, completely undetectable until it was too late. The affected species would not know they were dying out until their birth rates dropped to 0. By then, the genetic damage would be irreversible. Entire civilizations would simply fade away as their populations aged and died without replacement. Meanwhile, Captain Nina Rodriguez was leading covert operations deep in enemy territory. Her team used mimetic armor, another human innovation that adapted to any environment and made soldiers nearly invisible. Their mission was to infiltrate alien worlds and gather intelligence about remaining slave operations. On Zephyria Prime, homeworld of the Trade Federation, Nina's team discovered something that made even seasoned soldiers sick. The aliens had been conducting breeding programs using captured humans, trying to create new varieties of slaves for different types of work. "Extraction Point Alpha," Nina radioed to her support team. "We need immediate evacuation for approximately 200 human survivors. Medical team standing by for psychological trauma treatment." The rescue mission became a slaughter. Nina's team moved through the breeding facilities like angels of death, executing every Zephyrian they found. The crystal beings shattered under human weapons, their fragments mixing with the blood of their victims. But the real destruction came from orbit. Admiral Harper had deployed a new weapon called the Glassmaker, a device that superheats silicon-based life forms until they melted into slag. Zephyria Prime's crystal cities became pools of molten glass within hours. Dr. Amanda Foster worked frantically in the refugee camps that humanity had established on liberated worlds. As head of the Xenobiology Division, her job was to help survivors of alien slavery recover from their ordeal. The stories she heard convinced her that humanity's war was not just justified, but necessary. They did not see us as people, one rescued human told her. We were just animals to them, useful animals that could be bred and modified for different jobs. They talked about improving our genetics the way farmers talk about breeding cattle. The psychological damage went beyond individual trauma. Entire species had been enslaved for so long that they had forgotten how to be free. Some prisoners begged to be returned to their captors rather than face the uncertainty of freedom. Dr. Foster established rehabilitation centers on 40 worlds, staffed with human psychologists and protected by Marine garrisons. Slowly, carefully, humanity began the process of teaching other species how to live without masters. The work was complicated by the fact that many rescued beings had been genetically modified by their captors. Some had been changed to work in specific environments. Others had been altered to be more docile and obedient. A few had been turned into living weapons designed to kill their own kind. We are not just fighting a war, Dr. Foster reported to Earth Command. We are trying to repair the damage done by thousands of years of systematic cruelty. Some of these species may never fully recover. Captain Tony Rivera patrolled the dead zones, areas of space where humanity allowed hostile species to exist but forbade them from leaving. His ships enforced a strict quarantine, destroying any vessel that tried to escape the designated boundaries. The dead zones were humanity's answer to the question of what to do with species that were too dangerous to reform, but too numerous to exterminate completely. They were allowed to survive in their designated areas, but they could never again threaten other worlds. Contact bearing 35 Mark 7, his sensor operator reported. Hegemony science vessel attempting to breach the quarantine line. Destroy it, Rivera ordered without hesitation. No warnings, no prisoners. Send a message to anyone else. Thinking about testing our boundaries, the Hegemony ship vanished in a ball of superheated plasma. It was the 47th vessel Rivera had destroyed while enforcing the quarantine. The aliens were slow learners, but they were finally beginning to understand that the boundaries were absolute. Elder Whisper of Stars received reports of humanity's actions from across the galaxy. The ancient keeper sat in her meditation chamber on the neutral world of Haven, trying to understand what her species had helped to unleash. The humans were not content with simple conquest. They were systematically reshaping galactic civilization, according to their own moral standards. Species that enslaved others were eliminated. Worlds that conducted genetic experiments were sterilized. Trade routes that trafficked in sentient beings were permanently closed. But most disturbing of all was humanity's efficiency. They did not waste time with trials or negotiations. Any species found guilty of crimes against sentient life was simply removed from existence. The galaxy was being purged of its predators by an even more effective predator. They have become exactly what we feared, Whisper of Stars said to her aide. Perfect killers with a moral code. They are eliminating everything they consider evil, and they have the power to make their judgments final. A human delegation arrived at Haven the next day. Admiral Lisa Harper stepped off the shuttle with her usual escort of Marines. She looked older than when the war had started, worn down by the weight of command and the decisions she had been forced to make. "Elder," Admiral Harper said with formal greeting, "we need to discuss the future of galactic civilization." They met in Whisper of Stars' private garden, surrounded by plants from hundreds of worlds. The ancient being poured tea from a ceremonial service while Admiral Harper explained humanity's plans for the galaxy. "We cannot return to the old system," Admiral Harper said. "Too many species use their freedom to prey on others. We have seen what happens when the strong are allowed to exploit the weak without consequence. So you will impose your will on everyone," Whisper of Stars observed. "You will decide which species deserve to survive and which do not." "We will protect those who cannot protect themselves," Admiral Harper replied. "We will eliminate those who profit from suffering. If that makes us tyrants, then so be it. The galaxy created us. Now it has to live with what we have become." Whisper of Stars sipped her tea and considered the human's words. The irony was bitter. The species that had once been helpless victims were now the most feared predators in galactic history. They had learned the galaxy's rules and decided to change them permanently. 5 years after first contact, Admiral Lisa Harper stood in the observation deck of the former Galactic Council chambers. The ancient space station that had once housed the galaxy's most powerful civilizations now served as the headquarters for humanity's growing empire. Through the massive windows, she could see the patrol routes of human ships as they moved between the stars. The galaxy looked peaceful from this distance, but Harper knew better. Peace was only possible because humanity enforced it with overwhelming force. "Supreme Commander," Captain Jake Martinez said as he approached with the daily reports. "The morning briefings are ready." Harper nodded and followed him to the main conference room. The title still felt strange to her. 5 years ago, she had been a naval officer planning Earth's defense against an impossible enemy. Now she commanded fleets that patrolled across hundreds of star systems. The briefing room was filled with officers from Earth's various military branches. Admiral Kevin Stone reported on fleet operations in the former hegemony territories. Captain Nina Rodriguez gave updates on Special Forces missions in the neutral zones. Dr. Marcus Bell provided status reports on the ongoing genetic monitoring programs. "The dead zone quarantines remain secure," Admiral Stone began. "No attempted breaches in the last 30 days. The remaining hegemony worlds are maintaining agricultural production as required. Food shipments to refugee centers are on schedule." Harper listened to the reports with mixed feelings. The dead zones were humanity's compromise between mercy and security. Species that had committed crimes against sentient life were allowed to survive, but only in designated areas where they could never again threaten others. They lived under constant human surveillance, permitted to maintain basic civilization, but forbidden from developing space travel or advanced weapons. "What about the Nexari situation?" Harper asked. Dr. Bell consulted his data pad. "The sterility plague has achieved its intended effect. Birth rates have dropped to 0 across all infected worlds. The species will be extinct within 40 years as the current population ages. No signs of natural immunity developing." The room was quiet for a moment. The extinction of an entire species was not something to celebrate, even when that species had conducted horrific experiments on prisoners. But the Nexari had chosen their fate when they decided to play with human genetics. "Refugee integration reports," Harper said, moving to the next topic. Commander Rachel Green stepped forward. As head of the Refugee Integration Authority, she oversaw the massive effort to help liberated slaves adjust to freedom. It was one of humanity's most important but difficult tasks. We have successfully resettled 3.7 million beings across 47 worlds, Rachel reported. Psychological rehabilitation is ongoing for species that were enslaved for multiple generations. Physical rehabilitation continues for those who were genetically modified by their captors. The numbers only told part of the story. Humanity had discovered that many alien species had been enslaved for so long that they had lost all memory of freedom. Some prisoners actually fought against their rescuers, believing that slavery was the natural order of things. Dr. Amanda Foster's rehabilitation centers worked around the clock to help these beings remember how to make choices for themselves. The process was slow and often heartbreaking, but it was necessary. Humanity refused to simply replace one form of slavery with another. "The Keeper delegation has arrived," Captain Martinez announced. "Elder Whisper of Stars is requesting a meeting." Harper nodded. The Keepers were the only species that had warned against attacking Earth. For that, they had earned humanity's protection and respect. Their ancient wisdom was often helpful in understanding the complex politics of galactic civilization. Elder Whisper of Stars entered the briefing room with her usual escort of younger keepers. The ancient being moved slowly but with dignity, her great age evident in every careful step. She settled into the specially designed chair that had been built for her comfort. "Supreme Commander," she said in her quiet voice that somehow carried to every corner of the room, "I come with news from the Outer Rim territories." "What news?" Harper asked. 3 new species have been discovered attempting to establish slave-trading operations in the abandoned systems. They appear to be testing whether humanity's reach extends to the galactic edge. Harper felt a familiar cold anger settle in her chest. Even after 5 years of systematic destruction, some species still believed they could profit from the suffering of others. They would learn otherwise. "Dispatch the 7th Fleet," she ordered Admiral Stone. "Standard protocols. No warnings. No prisoners. Send a message that will reach every corner of the galaxy." "Understood," Admiral Stone replied. He would carry out the orders without question, as he had dozens of times before. Humanity's reputation was built on absolute consistency. Any species that enslaved others would be eliminated completely. Elder Whisper of Stars watched the exchange with her ancient eyes. "You have brought peace to the galaxy," she observed. "But it is the peace of the grave for many species." "They chose their fate," Harper replied. "We offered cooperation. We offered trade. We offered peaceful coexistence. They responded with invasion fleets and slave markets. This is the consequence of their choices. And what of the future?" The Elder asked. "Will humanity rule the galaxy forever?" Harper walked to the observation windows and looked out at the stars. Somewhere among them, human ships were patrolling the shipping lanes, ensuring that no species preyed upon another. The sight filled her with both pride and sadness. "We rule because we must," Harper said. "The galaxy proved that it cannot govern itself. Left to their own devices, the strong will always exploit the weak. We have ended that cycle permanently." Captain Tony Rivera commanded the border patrol that kept hostile species contained in their designated areas. His ships were the newest and most advanced in the human fleet, equipped with weapons that could destroy entire solar systems if necessary. Today, he was investigating reports of illegal ship construction in one of the dead zones, the former hegemony, Worlds were allowed to build agricultural equipment and basic transportation, but anything that could be used for military purposes was strictly forbidden. "Scan complete," his sensor operator reported. "Detecting advanced metallurgy consistent with warship construction. Estimate 12 vessels in various stages of completion." Rivera felt no surprise. The hegemony remnants periodically attempted to rebuild their military capabilities. They never learned that humanity monitored every particle of refined metal in their systems. "Launch planet crackers," Rivera ordered. "Target the illegal shipyards and any associated facilities. Leave the agricultural areas intact. The weapons," struck from orbit with surgical precision. The secret shipyards vanished in balls of superheated plasma while nearby farms remained completely untouched. It was a demonstration of humanity's technological superiority and their commitment to enforcing galactic law. "Message transmitted to all dead zone administrators," Rivera's communications officer reported. "Standard warning about the consequences of violating quarantine terms." Dr. Sarah Kim worked in her research laboratory aboard the space station, developing new technologies for monitoring galactic civilization. Her neural interface systems had evolved far beyond their original military applications. "The new surveillance network is operational," she reported to Harper during their weekly meeting. "We can now monitor every ship movement, every communication, and every industrial activity across the galaxy in real time." The technology was necessary but disturbing. Humanity had created a surveillance state that spanned thousands of star systems. Every species lived under constant observation, their activities analyzed by artificial intelligence systems that could detect threats before they fully formed. "Privacy concerns?" Harper asked. "None from the protected species," Dr. Kim replied. "They understand that surveillance is the price of safety. The hostile species in the dead zones have no privacy rights under galactic law as we have defined it." Harper nodded. It was a harsh system, but it was effective. For the first time in galactic history, weak species could develop their civilizations without fear of conquest or enslavement. The cost was eternal vigilance by humanity. Commander Dan Walker led the diplomatic corps that managed relations with the surviving neutral species. His job was to help them adapt to the new galactic order while ensuring they understood the consequences of violating humanity's laws. "The Antarian Republic has requested permission to establish a new colony," Dan reported. "All genetic screening protocols have been completed. No evidence of slave trading or genetic experimentation in their history." "Approved," Harper said. "Assign a monitoring team to ensure continued compliance." It was how the galaxy worked now. Species that had clean records were allowed to expand and develop under human protection. Those with histories of exploitation remained confined to their current territories. The distinction was absolute and permanent. Elder Whisper of Stars prepared to return to her homeworld, but she had one final question for the human commander. "Do you ever regret what your species has become?" she asked. "You were once explorers and dreamers. Now you are guards and executioners." 10 years had passed since humanity first left Earth to hunt their enemies among the stars. A new generation was coming of age, born after the Great War had ended. These young humans knew a galaxy where their species ruled supreme, where alien civilizations bowed to human authority, and where the word slavery existed only in history books. Lieutenant Alex Parker stood on the observation deck of the UES New Horizon, watching his first patrol assignment unfold before him. At 22 years old, he had never seen real combat. The galaxy was peaceful now, kept that way by the constant presence of human ships and the terrible reputation of what happened to species that broke humanity's laws. First time in the Outer Rim? Asked Commander Kate Sullivan, the ship's second officer. She was old enough to remember the war years, though she had been too young to fight in them. Yes, ma'am, Alex replied. I've studied the history, but seeing it in person is different. Through the viewport, they could see the ruins of what had once been a major hegemony military base. The massive structures had been turned to twisted metal and glass by human weapons a decade ago. Now they served as a monument to the consequences of threatening humanity. The base held 50,000 alien soldiers, Commander Sullivan explained. They were planning to use it as a staging area for attacks on liberated worlds. Admiral Stone's fleet ended those plans in about 30 minutes. Alex studied the ruins with fascination and horror. The destruction was so complete that it was hard to imagine the base had ever been functional. Entire sections had been melted into unrecognizable shapes by weapons that exceeded anything in his textbooks. Captain Ryan Foster called his senior staff to the bridge for their daily briefing. The New Horizon was one of the newest ships in the human fleet, equipped with technology that the alien species could not even comprehend. Its mission was routine patrol of the neutral territories, ensuring that trade flowed freely and that no species attempted to restart the old practices of exploitation. Intelligence reports from Sector 7, Captain Foster began, reading from his datapad. 3 merchant vessels from the Caldari Republic requested permission to establish a new trade route through formerly contested space. Background checks are clean. No history of slave trading or genetic experimentation. Lieutenant Alex Parker listened to the briefing with interest. This was how the galaxy worked now. Any species that wanted to expand their operations had to request permission from humanity. The applications were thoroughly investigated by human intelligence services that had access to records going back thousands of years. Permission granted, Captain Foster decided. Assign escort ships to monitor their initial runs. Standard protocol for new trade partners. Dr. Jennifer Lee worked in the ship's Cultural Studies Department, one of the most important divisions in the modern human fleet. Her job was to study newly contacted species and determine whether they posed any threat to galactic stability. The E. Valdani contacted us yesterday, Dr. Lee reported. They are a peaceful agricultural society that was recently liberated from Zephyrian control. They want to join the protected territories. Assessment? Captain Foster asked. Clean record. They were victims, not perpetrators. Their society shows no signs of hierarchical exploitation. I recommend full protection status with standard monitoring protocols. It was a familiar pattern. Across the galaxy, species that had been enslaved or exploited were emerging from hiding places where they had waited out the war. Humanity welcomed them with open arms as long as they proved they had no intention of becoming predators themselves. The ship's communications officer looked up from her station with a puzzled expression. Captain, we are receiving a distress call from an unknown source. The signal is coming from outside mapped space. Captain Foster frowned. The galaxy had been thoroughly explored by human survey teams over the past decade. Finding an unknown source was unusual and potentially dangerous. Analysis? He asked. The signal appears to be artificial, Lieutenant Alex Parker reported from his sensor station. But the technology is unlike anything in our databases. It's not from any known species. Commander Sullivan moved to the tactical station and began running threat assessments. Could be a trap. Some of the hostile species in the dead zones have been trying to develop new technologies to escape their confinement. Or it could be genuine, Dr. Lee added. There are still unexplored regions of the galaxy. We might have found a new species. Captain Foster considered his options. Standing orders required any contact with unknown species to be reported immediately to Fleet Command. But the distress call suggested someone was in immediate danger. Set course for the signal source, he decided. Battle stations. If this is a trap, we will be ready for it. The New Horizon jumped to faster-than-light travel, covering the distance to the signal source in minutes. What they found there surprised everyone on the bridge. A small ship drifted in space, clearly damaged and venting atmosphere. The design was unlike anything in human databases, but it showed no signs of advanced weapons or military technology. It appeared to be a simple exploration vessel. Life signs? Captain Foster asked. Confirmed, Alex reported. 3 individuals aboard. Their biology does not match any known species. They appear to be carbon-based, but with some unusual characteristics. Beam them directly to the medical bay, Captain Foster ordered. Full quarantine protocols. I want them isolated until we know what we are dealing with. The rescue operation went smoothly. The 3 aliens were transferred to the ship's medical facility, where Dr. Patricia Wells began the process of determining their biological needs and medical condition. They are definitely a new species, Dr. Wells reported an hour later. Humanoid, but with significant differences. They appear to be herbivorous and show no signs of genetic modification or enhancement. Most interesting of all, they have no weapons of any kind. Captain Foster and his senior staff gathered in the medical bay to observe the aliens through the quarantine barrier. The 3 beings were conscious and alert, though clearly frightened by their situation. "Do they understand our language?" Commander Sullivan asked. "Not yet," Dr. Lee replied. "But I am working on basic communication protocols. They seem intelligent and cooperative." Over the next several hours, Dr. Lee managed to establish basic communication with the aliens. Their ship had been damaged by what they described as metal eaters, some kind of spaceborne organism that consumed starship hulls. "They are explorers," Dr. Lee explained to Captain Foster. "Their species is called the Ethon. They come from a world far outside our current maps. They have been traveling for months, trying to find other intelligent life." "What do they know about the galaxy?" Captain Foster asked. "Very little. They seem to have no knowledge of the war or the current political situation. They have never encountered slavery or military conquest. Their entire civilization appears to be based on peaceful exploration and scientific discovery." Captain Foster found himself in an unusual situation. For 10 years, humanity had been dealing with species that had long histories of conflict and exploitation. The Ethan appeared to be genuinely innocent, with no knowledge of the galaxy's dark past. "What are our orders in this situation?" Lieutenant Alex Parker asked. "Standard first contact protocols," Captain Foster replied. "But we proceed very carefully. We need to determine if their innocence is genuine or if this is some kind of elaborate deception." Dr. Wells completed her medical examination of the aliens and provided her assessment. "No signs of genetic manipulation or enhancement, no hidden weapons or dangerous organisms. They appear to be exactly what they claim to be, peaceful explorers who got lost." The senior staff gathered in the conference room to discuss their next steps. The Ethan represented something new in the post-war galaxy, a species with no connection to the old conflicts and no knowledge of humanity's reputation. "We need to contact Fleet Command," Commander Sullivan said. "This decision is above our authority level." "Agreed," Captain Foster replied. "But I want to continue basic contact while we wait for orders. These beings might represent an opportunity to show the galaxy what humanity prefers to be. Dr. Lee spent the next day working with the Ethan, learning about their culture and technology. What she discovered was remarkable. The Ethan had developed advanced space travel through purely peaceful means. Their entire civilization was based on cooperation and mutual aid. They have no concept of warfare, Dr. Lee reported. When I tried to explain human military organization, they could not understand why anyone would need weapons. Their species has never experienced conflict beyond minor disagreements over resource allocation. Lieutenant Alex Parker found himself fascinated by the aliens. They represented everything that humanity might have become if the galaxy had been different. Instead of being forced to become warriors and enforcers, humans might have remained explorers and scientists. What will happen to them? Alex asked Dr. Lee during one of their conversations. That depends on Fleet Command, Dr. Lee replied. But I hope we can find a way to protect their innocence. The galaxy has seen enough corruption. The answer came the next day in a message from Admiral Lisa Harper herself. The Ethon were to be granted full protection status and escorted to a safe world where they could establish a colony. More importantly, 15 years after the Great War ended, humanity faced a crisis that would test everything they had built. Deep in the Outer Rim territories, something was happening that challenged the very foundation of human authority in the galaxy. Captain Mike Thompson received the emergency transmission while his ship patrolled the neutral zone between human space and the dead zones. The message came from Admiral Lisa Harper herself, now in her 70s, but still commanding human forces with iron determination. All available ships report to Sector 12 immediately. The Admiral's voice crackled through the communication system. We have a situation that requires immediate response. Captain Thompson had been born after the war, but he had studied the histories carefully. Emergency calls from Admiral Harper were rare and always meant serious trouble. He ordered his ship to maximum speed toward the designated coordinates. When the human fleet assembled in Sector 12, Thompson was amazed by the size of the response. Over 300 ships had answered the call, including some of the most powerful vessels in the human navy. Whatever was happening, Fleet Command considered it a major threat. Admiral Harper appeared on the main communication screen, her aged face showing the weight of decades spent governing the galaxy. Behind her, Thompson could see the bridge of the flagship UES Terra's Wrath, the same ship that had led humanity's conquest of their enemies. 15 years ago, we ended the age of galactic slavery and exploitation, Admiral Harper began. We established laws that protect the innocent and punish those who prey on the weak. Today, those laws are being challenged. The assembled fleet commanders listened in silence as Admiral Harper explained the situation. A coalition of species from the Outer Rim had formed what they called the Liberation Front. Their goal was to overthrow human authority and return the galaxy to its previous state of chaos. They call themselves freedom fighters, Admiral Harper continued. They claim that humanity has become the very oppressors we once fought against. They say our protection is really slavery under a different name. Captain Thompson felt a chill run down his spine. The idea that humanity could be seen as oppressors was disturbing. Everything they had done was to protect the innocent and maintain peace. How could anyone see that as tyranny? Commander Sarah Davis, one of Admiral Harper's senior officers, provided the tactical briefing. The Liberation Front had assembled a fleet of over 500 ships from dozens of different species. They were hiding in an unexplored nebula beyond the galactic rim, preparing for a coordinated attack on human installations. Intelligence indicates they have been planning this for years, Commander Davis reported. They have somehow acquired advanced weapons technology that approaches our own capabilities. This is not a minor rebellion. This is a full-scale war. Dr. Kevin Mitchell, now head of Human Intelligence Services, presented his analysis of the threat. The Liberation Front was led by survivors of the old Galactic Order, species that had benefited from the previous system of exploitation and slavery. They miss the old days when the strong could prey on the weak without consequence, Dr. Mitchell explained. They see human protection of vulnerable species as an obstacle to their profits. This is not about freedom. This is about returning to the business of slavery. Admiral Harper called for a vote among the fleet commanders. The decision was whether to offer the rebels a chance to surrender peacefully or to destroy them immediately as a lesson to others who might consider challenging human authority. Captain Thompson was surprised when the vote was close. Many of the younger officers, like himself, had grown up in the peaceful galaxy that humanity had created. They believed in giving enemies a chance to surrender. The older officers, who remembered the war years, were less forgiving. "We offer them one chance," Admiral Harper decided after the vote was tallied. "If they surrender their weapons and return to their designated territories, they will be allowed to live. If they refuse, we end this rebellion permanently." The human fleet moved toward the nebula where the Liberation Front was hiding. As they approached, Captain Thompson could see why the rebels had chosen this location. The dense gas clouds would interfere with sensors and provide cover for hit-and-run attacks. "All ships, maintain formation," Admiral Harper ordered. "Be ready for anything." These rebels have had years to prepare for this confrontation. The human surrender offer was transmitted on all frequencies as the fleet entered the nebula. The response came quickly and was not what anyone expected. Instead of words, the rebels answered with weapons fire. "They are using some kind of new energy weapon," reported Lieutenant Amy Rodriguez from her position at the sensor station. "Our shields are holding, but the technology is more advanced than anything we have seen from galactic species." Captain Thompson realized that the Liberation Front had not just been planning a rebellion. They had been developing new weapons specifically designed to fight human ships. Someone had been helping them, providing technology that should have been impossible for them to acquire. The battle that followed was unlike anything the younger human officers had experienced. The rebel ships fought with desperate fury, using tactics that seemed designed specifically to counter human advantages. They had studied human combat methods and developed countermeasures. "They know our weaknesses," Commander Davis reported to Admiral Harper. "Someone has been giving them detailed information about our ships and tactics." Admiral Harper's expression grew cold as she processed this information. The rebellion was not just a political uprising. It was a coordinated attempt to overthrow human authority using inside knowledge of human capabilities. That meant there was a traitor somewhere in the human command structure. Dr. Patricia Stone, the fleet's chief scientist, made a disturbing discovery as she analyzed the rebel weapons. "These energy signatures match theoretical designs from our own research programs," she reported. "Someone has been sharing our classified weapons research with the enemy. The implications were staggering. Somewhere in the human government or military, someone was secretly supporting the rebellion. They had provided the rebels with advanced weapons and detailed intelligence about human operations. Identify the source of the leak," Admiral Harper ordered Dr. Stone. "I want to know who is responsible for this betrayal." The battle continued for hours as human ships fought their way through the nebula. The rebels fought harder than expected, but they were still outmatched by human technology and training. One by one, their ships were destroyed or disabled. Captain Thompson led a boarding party onto a captured rebel command ship. What they found there confirmed their worst fears. The ship's computer contained detailed files about human military operations, including classified information that should have been known only to senior fleet commanders. The data came from Earth, Thompson reported to Admiral Harper. Someone in the government has been feeding information to the rebels for years. Admiral Harper received this news with the calm of someone who had seen too much betrayal over the years. She had fought aliens who enslaved children and conducted genetic experiments on prisoners. The idea that humans could betray their own species was sadly not surprising. "Secure all rebel survivors for interrogation," she ordered. "I want to know everything about their operation and who helped them." The interrogations revealed the full scope of the conspiracy. A group of human politicians and business leaders had secretly organized the rebellion, believing that human control of the galaxy was too restrictive for profitable trade. They wanted to return to the old system where strong species could exploit weak ones. "They call themselves the Free Trade Alliance," reported Major Dan Wilson, who had conducted the interrogations. "They believe that human protection of vulnerable species interferes with natural economic development." Admiral Harper felt a familiar cold anger settle in her chest. These humans had forgotten the lessons of the war. They had forgotten what the galaxy was like before humanity imposed order. They thought they could profit from chaos and suffering just like the alien species humanity had destroyed. "Arrest warrants for all conspirators," Admiral Harper ordered. "Anyone who supported this rebellion will face trial for treason." The trials that followed sent shockwaves through human society. 12 senators, 43 business leaders, and 16 military officers were found guilty of supporting the rebellion. The evidence against them was overwhelming, including recorded communications with rebel leaders. "You have betrayed everything humanity fought for," Admiral Harper said during the sentencing hearing. "You wanted to return to a galaxy where the strong prey on the weak. You chose to stand with slavers and exploiters against your own species." The sentences were severe. The conspirators were stripped of their citizenship and exiled to remote worlds where they could never again influence galactic politics. Their assets were seized and used to compensate species that had been harmed by the rebellion. Captain Thompson watched the trials with mixed feelings. He was proud that humanity had uncovered and stopped the conspiracy, but he was troubled by the idea that humans could betray their own principles for profit. "Does this change anything?" he asked Commander Davis after the trials ended. "It changes everything," she replied. "We now know that the greatest threat to galactic peace might come from within humanity itself. We must be vigilant against ague,